Hey everyone, it's Keely here for Soy and Shea, and thank you so much for joining me for today's video where I'm doing one of the Patreon soap design challenges. For this month, I asked my patrons to name an embed that they'd like me to put on top of the soap, and they could suggest something from a mold, piping, hand modeled, anything they wanted to. I put all the suggestions into the soapy jug and I drew one of them out, and the one that came out was from Lorraine, who runs Lorraine's Soapery, and I'll leave links down in the bottom to her business so you can go and check her out. Now Lorraine put in what I thought was going to be a relatively simple embed, and that was for a starfish. Now the starfish is super easy to make, but coming up with the design, I don't think I have struggled so much to come up with a soap design in such a long time. I didn't want to copy my usual seashells soap. I have been making that design for a number of years now. It's part of my sort of range, and I've noticed more and more of that design is actually popping up. So I didn't want to make it completely that sort of design, but I was really struggling with any other ideas. I thought about doing it as a rock pool, but then I couldn't get my head to comprehend the fact that the starfish was sitting on top of the rock pool instead of down underneath the water, so I scrapped that idea. I did contemplate just making it a plain blue base or even just a plain sand base, but just nothing was really singing to me. I decided to sit down 6 weeks later after she actually made the suggestion, so I was running really late. I created the little starfish embeds, which you will see in just a moment, and I kind of had an idea in my head, and then the next day when I was actually setting up to make this soap, thinking I'm just going to go on a wing and a prayer, the design suddenly hit me, and then I had to scramble to go and get all the equipment ready, and you should see the mess that I make at the end of this video. One thing I did forget to say during the cutting of this is to make comment on the fragrance that I use, and it smells really nice. It's held really well. Hopefully it holds throughout its cure, but it does have that sort of real beachy vibe to it as well. Let's go and check out how I make beachside soap. Let's go. To make our starfish, I'm using these little fondant silicone molds, and I have got some orange soap dough here, and I'm just going to break off a piece of that one. I'm only going to do the one size starfish, and I've picked the smallest one in my mold, which is this one down here. Now that I've just rolled my soap dough into a bit of a ball, I'm just going to push it into that cavity space like so, making sure it's in there well. Then I'm going to grab my little scraper tool and just scrape off the excess from off the back of my mold there, and then it should very simply just pop out. It makes making your little embed so quick and easy by combining the silicone molds and your soap dough together. So gonna again just get a piece, condition it up into a ball, and then push it into that cavity, and I'm going to take the top off, get it nice and flat so it sits well on our soap, then just gently peel it from out of the mold there. So I'm going to get all 18 of my starfish done. I'll probably change my mind again about the design that I'm doing for this soap, but I am going to stick to one little starfish per soap, so I'll get that done, and then we'll get on to making our soap. Alright, so I think I'm ready to do my soaping. I've actually split my oils into 2 batches because I want plenty of working time. So I've taken my usual oil batch and I've just split out 500 grams worth of oil and lye water solution here. And I kid you not when I say I have only just finalized the design idea that I've got in my mind. So hopefully this is all going to come together, but we'll see. And I've split this up because I want to kind of do a bit of a layered sea scene at the bottom of the soap, and then work up to sort of like a shoreline effect on the top of the soap. So I think I've got everything done. I've got piping bags, I've got colors, I've got fragrance. Let's get this lye water in and just go for it. Hopefully it's not too cold. We are heading into some cooler mornings, thank goodness, but it does mean my oils are a little bit more set. All right, this is just before it's getting to a light trace. I'm going to stop there so I've got enough time to mix my colors and fragrance in. In this pot, I have this sort of magical concoction. I have done a video on this, which I will link up in the top right hand corner of this video, showing how I achieve this color. This is the color that I always use for my sand and for my seashells. Just going to start by pouring that amount in there. And then in these jugs, I have a little bit of bubblegum pink. I have some Eminence purple mica, and I have my favorite green, the Caribbean green, in here. Now, I'm not going to need much of these colors. I always say that and then end up pouring off way too much. But I'm going to try and go for less of the pink and purple. I want that to look like a little bit of coral, maybe sitting in the bottom of the water. And then this green, I'll need a little bit more. I'm going to try and do some seaweed with it. That should be plenty. And I am not going to fit that into this jug. So let's just create some washing up, shall we? Just pour this bag in here. All right, I'm going to get this one scraped out. We'll get those colors mixed up. And then first thing I'll do is pour my sand. Once I've got my fragrance oil in here, I'll pour my sand into the base of my mold. And then once I feel it's set up enough, we'll pipe some seaweed and some coral in the bottom of it. Now, the fragrance I'm going to be using today is one that I've had from Off of Scent Method, which I was looking at using in my perfume range for men, but decided that it was just not, I didn't think it was the oomph there that I was looking for in a cologne style of spray. As I've said in other videos, I don't want them too strong, but I also want them to have just a little bit of oomph. This one's called Le Male, and it's got a little bit of bergamot. There is some mint, lavender and cardamom in there as well. So it is a really nice blend, but just not what I was looking for in a cologne. I'm going to get this mixed up. And I will put the colour in those other ones as well, but I might just leave it for a second and see what happens once we get this bit mixed in. Now, luckily for me, that fragrance oil behaved really well. It's actually been several weeks since I have made any soap, and usually when that happens, I do stupid little mistakes when I start making them again, like pouring in my fragrance before I've even mixed the colour in, especially with titanium dioxide. But thankfully it worked in my favour. It is still staying relatively fluid here. So let's grab the mould, and what I want to do is I want to do like a slanted sea bank sort of thing under the water. So I know my mold is flat right now, but once I've got a good portion of that poured in, because I'm thinking of leaving some of that back for the top so we can have the same color top and bottom. I think that might be good. That should leave me enough for the top. I'm then just going to pull my mold back a little bit, and then I'm just going to actually pop these molds underneath just to keep it on that slant. Clip that up out of my way there, and then I am just going to very gently pull this back and up into a bit of a mound. I'm not worried if I've got any of that sort of colour still on the bottom. I want it to kind of almost have a sandbank sort of feel, so there's, you know, a real drop off into the water. But that's looking good. Let's turn that over so we can get the corner in. Let's move this bit out the way so we can actually still work. This is pretty much holding its shape right now, so it is thickening up fast. What I'm going to do is I have got a piping bag in here with no tip in it, and this leftover that I've got from off the base, I'm actually going to put in my piping bag. I want to save this for the top of my soap, but if I just leave it sitting here in the jug exposed to the air, that's going to start that, well, it's already started the saponification process, but the air just makes it go that little bit quicker. But if I pop it into my piping bag and close it up so the air can't get to it, I find that it does slow that sort of thickening, hardening sort of pace of the soap, and I'll be able to pop that onto the top of the soap when we get to that point. Alright, so I've got my other colours. I'm going to pour my fragrance in here. Normally I don't put fragrance into my piping, but this is not going to be very complicated piping, so why not? Let's get this mixed up and into the piping bags, and then we'll finish the bottom. Alright, so I've got all my colours in my piping bags, and I'm pretty sure I've saved way too much colour, but there's not much I can do about it now. Alright, maybe with the purple I can mix it in with the sea colours. We'll see. What I'm going to do with this, I think it might be best to try and work with the coral colours first. So we'll grab whichever one this is. These are just some generic piping tips I've got. This is like a really closed in star tip. I am just going to basically run... Not going to do anything too fancy because you're not going to really see anything too fancy in the cut of the soap at the bottom, but I am just going to run this along, making sure that the soap fills all the sort of gaps, so we don't end up with any air pockets. We will see the kind of, this tip gives a slightly grooved top, so you will see that, but what I mean is if you start doing rosettes and stuff in there, you're not really going to see it. So we've got some purple down. Let's get a bit of pink. I have got a slightly different tip for my pink just to give them some different looks there, and I'm just running one up the side. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I am making sure, as I said, to fill in or make sure that that soap touches the bottom so we don't end up with any air pockets in here. Now, I'm pretty sure I've saved way too much pink and purple like I usually do, so I'm just going to fill in as much as possible and try and make a bit of a coral bank here, just to try and give that coral look a little bit of a different colour. I am just going to put in just a little bit. I know you can't see what I'm doing right down the bottom here, but I'm just going to put in some little bits of seaweed in between them as well. Now, when I'm doing this, actually I've done it wrong. I should actually be doing it so that my seaweed comes up skinny wise so we can actually see it. And this is actually isn't quite thick enough yet, but we're going to keep going because I've got about 10 minutes until I have to open the shop up. But I'm just filling in this little bit of a gap, and then we'll continue putting some more pink and purple in here. And then along the very sides of here, once this really starts to firm up, I'm going to try and get some taller pieces of seaweed, but I need this to firm up a fair bit more before I can actually get those taller pieces going. And you know what, in fact, I've actually changed my mind. As I so often do mid-design. I'm actually really liking how this is coming up, and I don't think having the really tall seaweed is going to work. So I am just going to continue to put a few more sort of banks of coral and just fill in with seaweed in between, and I think that's going to look really, really pretty. So let's get some music going, and you can watch me do this before we start setting up all the blues. Alright, so I'm pretty pleased with how that is looking so far, and I managed to use up all of that pink, purple and green, so there's no leftover. What I'm going to do is let this sit for about 10 minutes so all that piping starts to get really hard. And then we're going to come back and we're going to put a nice blue layer over the top. Alright, so we're going to move on to the next bit. Now, because I do want this stage to be a little bit more fluid, I have gone ahead and warmed my oils up by a couple of degrees, and hopefully that will help us get a really nice watery sort of look to our soap. So I'm going to pour my lye water in, and then we're going to split it up for a couple of blue colours. I have got some aquamarine, a cool vista and some sea mist, and we'll also be doing a little bit of white as well. Let's get all this mixed up. Any of the fragrance to the white because it does have 1% vanillin in it, and I don't want it to discolor. I'm going to do my favorite pour when it comes to doing anything water, and that's, people call it lots of different things, dirty pours, I don't know, a faux funnel, all sorts of things, but basically I'm just going to pour my colors back into my pot. And then once I've got that, we're going to pour it into the mold. Now I am going to hold back some of that white because I do want to put some of that onto the top. The idea is I want to try and make this look like we've got some crashing waves on a beach going up to those starfish. I was going to say seashells, but no, we've got starfish. Alright, let's get all this in, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do. See, I've just popped this up on a little bit of a slant, so I've got a bit of a divot in here, and what I want to do is just with this sand colour, I know that it's quite thick at the moment, but I am just going to pipe it along the edge here, being careful not to let it sink down. Oop, I think that bit went down just a little bit. Fill up those gaps, and then I'm going to kind of smooth it out to make it look like the edge of the beach. Alright, so now that I've got that on there, let's give this white a bit of a stir. I know this is looking like an absolute mess, and you should see the mess I've got on my countertop, but what I want to do is kind of make it look, hopefully, like we've got some crashing waves. I know the beach and that is looking very similar at the moment, but it will change as it sets up and the colours really saponify into each other and darken. So really happy with this so far, especially since I couldn't actually decide on a design that I wanted to actually do. Hopefully I didn't leave myself too much white. And then just before this actually sets, to give it a bit more of a look, let's grab a chopstick from off the top here. I'll use the fine end, I think. And I'm just going to kind of swirl some waves in there. okay, well that was some sort of military jet that just went over the top. Oh, I know what that is. We're going to have a real quiet day in the shop. I completely and utterly forgot. There is some sort of parade thing happening down at the marina. I don't know, someone from council came in and told me about it, and then told me about all these road closures, and I went, great, just another event that actually stops business here in Cleveland. Whoopee. It's some sort of military event that celebrates the freedom of access to the bay, or something like that. I don't know. All I know is that they have closed off all the major roads into Cleveland. And they do this a lot when they do things like the triathlons, and they say, oh, it brings business into the area. All it does is it lines our council's pockets with a little bit of extra money, and it stops people from being able to access the actual shops here in Cleveland. So that is what that plane was. It would have been something to do with it's meant to be Navy, but maybe it's one of the naval carriers or something. I don't know. I'm not really going to go and find out either, because I'm a bit ticked off that they have once again really hindered business in a community that really needs it right now. Let's get some of this mess cleaned up. This has to be one of the messiest soaps I have made in a long time. When we get this finished, I'll show you my washing up. I've really not planned this one very well. Alright, so what I am going to do now, I've got some of these gold cellulose beads that I have had from off of Heirloom, and I am just going to sprinkle some of them on here. I did think about putting some seashells and stuff, but as I said at the beginning, I was trying to avoid making the exact same soap. Like I made that, my original seashell soap, oh, a long time ago. I can't even remember. I'll have to have a look when I first put that one out here on YouTube. And I did it for a friend for a favor, and she loved the design, customers loved the design, so I did another bar, and it kind of became a permanent in my range. But ever since then, I've seen that design everywhere, and I just really wanted to avoid doing that same old thing and just coming up with a slightly different design for this soap. So I'm pretty pleased with it. Now I'm going to have to be really careful how I put these Starfish on. They will fit so that we end up with one per bar of soap, but I have to put them on at such an angle that we won't have too many chopped limbs. But then again, they do regrow their limbs, so it's not too bad. Well, that one's half hiding under the wave there, but I'm really pleased with how this is coming together and the new design for it. I'm not going to change the way I do my seashells, because this has been a lot of work, and I will show you in a minute a lot of mess as well. But I am super happy with how this one is coming together. Not happy with how that starfish is sitting, so let's do that. Try not to throw the rest of it on the floor while I'm at it. Alright, so let's get these on here. And those little gold cellulose beads, they are just really setting off this soap. So very pleased with it. Getting the last starfish on, and as I was putting these on, I'm thinking I really do hope I ended up putting this on the right way. My idea was to kind of have the sandbank up towards the front, like you would if you went to the beach, to have the sandbank at the front and then the drop off at the back. So I'm really hoping that the higher end of the sand is on this side, but we won't find out until tomorrow. Let me bring you down for a closer look. So here it is in the mold. It is looking absolutely fantastic. To the eye, there is a real color difference between the white and the ocean spray and the sand, and hopefully it will darken up a little bit more. I'm not sure if it's really capturing the difference on the camera. I am going to leave this one set up overnight, and we'll be back in a minute to cut it up. But the next thing I need to do is go and clean up all of this mess. I have not made this much mess. I don't even make this much mess making a rainbow soap, so I've definitely had fun making this one. Alright, we are back to cut into Beachside, and I am loving how this has come up. The sand has started to take on that slightly different colour to the wave and is a little bit more noticeable now. I do, as I expected, I'll show you once it's cut, have some little air pockets on the side and bottom, which I was expecting because of the piping that I have done. Now, what we need to do is get this lined up so that it doesn't cut my starfish too badly. I'm going to grab my ruler and make sure. Alright, so I think we can kind of nudge down just a little bit more. That's looking better. We are going to have some little casualties, but I want it so it's not too bad. Alright, that is looking much better. So let's chop on down and see. Oh no, that is really good. It's just taken off what I thought it would take from each of the starfish, and it's not too noticeable. Let's have a look. Oh, look at that inside. It is so pretty. I know it's a little bit hard to see at the moment, the seaweed in between all of that coral, but it's definitely there, and I'm so pleased I managed to get that sort of sandbank on the same side as what the water is crashing onto the beach. I absolutely love how this has turned out. It's just absolutely gorgeous with that little starfish on the top. It's considering how long it took me to finalize this design, it has actually come up better than what I initially had in my mind. You can see on the side here, this is where I was expecting to get some sort of air pockets. This is where I've piped the leaves up the side of the mold, so I knew that was going to be there, but it also gives that little bit of extra texture and feel to the soap, so I'm not bothered about that at all. But I absolutely love how this design has come out. One of the sort of ideas I had was just to do the whole bottom of this blue. As I said, I was really trying to avoid that sort of initial seashell design that I had, and I just think putting that little coral bank on there has really changed that design into something super cute. So this one has definitely been a challenge for me, but I have thoroughly enjoyed making the Beachside soap. Look at that one in there, look at those squiggles. So thank you so much for pushing me on this one. That's the whole idea of me doing these challenges over on the Patreon page, is to really push me to think of things that I probably wouldn't normally think of doing, and this one definitely did push me on that sort of design concept idea. So I hope you've enjoyed coming along as I made the Beachside soap. If you did, why not leave me a thumbs up and any comments down below, and until the next video comes out, I hope you have a good one, and I'll see you then. Bye.